cricket is a bug, a little bug. A cricket is a bug, a little bug. A bug who thinks of many things, of frogs and foxes, cats and kings. A cricket is a bug, a little bug.
Hi there, Crickets. I'm Clifton Fadiman, also known as Old Cricket, and I'm the senior editor of your magazine. I thought you might like to meet some of your authors and hear them read some of your favorite things from cricket.
A cricket is a bug, a little bug. A cricket is a bug, a little bug.
Cricket jackets.
By Eileen Fisher.
The day a cricket's jacket gets pinchy, he can crack it and hang it on a bracket as he goes hopping by.
He doesn't need a mother to go and buy another. He doesn't need a mother.
And I will tell you why. Beneath the pinchy jacket the cricket sheds with vigor, he has a new one growing that's just a little bigger to last him till July.
And then again he'll crack it
His pinchy cricket jacket.
and hang it on a bracket
As he goes hopping by.
Little Green Riding Hood by Johnny Rodari. Once upon a time, there was a little girl called Little Yellow Riding Hood.
No, Red Riding Hood.
Oh, yes, of course, Red Riding Hood. Well, one day, her mother called and said, Little Green Riding Hood...
Red!
Sorry, Red. Well, now, my child, go to Aunt Mary and take her these potatoes.
No, it doesn't go like that. Go to Grandma and take her these cakes.
All right. So the little girl went off, and in the woods she met a giraffe.
What a mess you're making of it. It was a wolf.
And the wolf said, What's 6 times 8?
No. The wolf asked her where she was going.
Oh, so he did. And Little Black Riding Hood replied,
Red!
She replied, I'm going to the market to buy some tomatoes.
No, she didn't. She said, I'm going to my grandma who is sick, but I've lost my way.
Of course. And the horse said,
What horse? It was a wolf.
Oh, so it was. And this is what it said. Take the 75 bus, get out at the main square, turn right, and at the first doorway you'll find 3 steps. Leave the steps where they are, but pick up the dime you'll find lying on them and buy yourself a packet of chewing gum.
Grandpa, you're terribly bad at telling stories. You've got it all wrong. But all the same, I wouldn't mind some chewing gum.
All right, here's your dime. And the old man turned back to his newspaper.
A nightlight. You've no need to light a nightlight on a light night like tonight, for a nightlight's light's a slight light, and tonight's a night that's light. When a night's light like tonight's light, it is really not quite right to light night lights with their slight lights on a light night like tonight.
Many years ago, I used to be on TV and radio. One show I worked on was called This Is Show Business. We introduced many fine performers on this show, and one of the best of them was a young comedian named Sam Levinson, who is now famous. He and I became great friends, partly because we'd both been high school teachers when we were younger, and partly because our childhoods were very much alike. Mr. Levinson wrote this story, A Hike in New York City, which you may remember reading in Cricket magazine.
At least once each summer, we kids went off on a hike, but never without strong opposition from Mama. When it came to the open road, Mama had a closed mind. Her method of discouraging us from venturing into the unknown was to make the entire project appear ridiculous. You're going on a what? We're going on a hike. What's a hike? Mama would ask. When we started to explain it, the whole idea did, in fact, become ridiculous. We go walking, Ma. Walking? For that, you have to leave home? What's the matter with walking right here? You walk, I'll watch. You don't understand, Ma. We take lunch along. Oh, so I'll give you lunch here, and you can march right around the table, and she'll start singing a march, clapping her hands rhythmically. But, Ma, we climb mountains in the woods. She couldn't understand why it was so much more enjoyable to fall off a mountain than off a fire escape. And how about the wild animals in the woods? Wild animals? What kind of wild animals, Ma? A bear, for instance. A bear could eat you up. Ma, bears don't eat little children. Okay, so he won't eat you, but he could take a bite and spit out. And I'm telling you now, if a wild animal eats you up, don't come running to me. And who's going with you? Well, there's Georgie. Georgie! Not Georgie. He's a real wild animal. She then went on to list all the conditions for the trip. And remember one thing. Don't tear your pants. And remember one thing. Don't eat wild berries and bring me home the cramps. And remember one thing. Don't tell me tomorrow morning that you're too tired to go to school. And remember one thing. Wear rubbers, a sweater, warm underwear, and an umbrella and a hat. And remember one thing. If you should get lost in the jungle, call up so I'll know you're all right. And don't dare come home without color in your cheeks. Oh, I wish I was young and free like you. Take soap. Since the consent was specifically granted for the next day only, that night none of us slept. There was always a chance that it might rain. Brother Albert stayed at the Crystal Set all night like a ship's radio operator with his earphones on, listening to weather bulletins and repeating them aloud for the rest of us. It's clearing in Nebraska. Hot air masses coming up from the Gulf. They say it's good for planting alfalfa. Storm warnings off the coast of Newfoundland. It's drizzling in Montreal. At 6 a.m., we were ready for Operation Hike, rain or shine. But we had to wait for Papa to get up. We didn't need his permission, but we did need his blanket. Into the valley of Central Park marched the 600, bowed down with knapsacks, flashlights, a Cracker-Jack box compass mirror, so you could tell not only where you were lost, but who was lost. A thermos bottle, sort of semi-automatic. You had to fill it, but it emptied by itself. And an axe. Onward, forward, upward. Philip was always the leader. He was the one to get lost first. Jerry was the lookout. He would yell, "Look out!" and fall off the cliff. None of us knew how long we were supposed to march. We went on because we wouldn't know what to do if we stopped. One brave coward finally spoke up. "I can't go on anymore. The heat is killing me. Let's start the fire here." No hike was complete without Georgie and his Uncle Bernie's World War I bugle. His kid had lungs like a vacuum cleaner. With him outside the walls of Jericho, they could have sent the rest of the army home. He used to stand on a hill and let go a blast that had the Staten Island ferries running into each other. Lunch, naturally, had been packed in a shoebox. Sandwiches, fruit, cheese, and napkins all squashed together neatly. The lid would open by itself every 20 minutes for air. It happened every time. The miracle of the sandwiches. One kid always got a brilliant idea. "Hey, I got a brilliant idea. I'm tired of my mother's sandwiches. Let's everybody trade sandwiches." And all the kids exchanged sandwiches, and miraculously, they all ended up with salami. Albert was the true nature lover. You know, you can learn a lot about human nature from the ants, he always said, as he lifted up rock after rock to study his favorite insects. And he was right. While he was studying the ants, somebody swiped his apple. We came home with color in our cheeks, green. To make sure we could go again, we didn't forget Mama. We brought her a bouquet. She took one whiff and broke out in red blotches. Papa yelled but didn't lay a hand on us. He was afraid it was catching.
There was a song in your October cricket magazine called The Fox. It's a folk song, and we have a famous folk singer to sing it for you. His name is Burl Ives.
Fox went out on a chilly night, prayed for the moon for to give him light, for he'd many a mile to go that night before he reached the town, oh, town, oh, town, oh, many a mile to go that night before he reached the town, oh. He ran till he came to a great big pen where the ducks and the geese were put therein. A couple of you will grease my chin before I leave this town, oh, town, oh, town, oh. Couple of you will grease my chin before I leave this town, oh. He grabbed the gray goose by the neck, throwed a duck across his back. He didn't mind their quack, 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 and the legs all dangling down, oh, down, oh, down, oh. He didn't mind their quack, 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 and the legs all dangling down, oh. Then old Mother Flipper Flopper jumped out of bed. Out of the window she cocked her head, crying, John, John, the gray goose is gone, and the fox is on the town, oh, town, oh, town, oh. Crying, John, John, the gray goose is gone, and the fox is on the town, oh. Then Foxy ran to his cozy den. There were the little ones, 8, 9, 10. They said, Daddy, better go back again, 'cause it must be a mighty fine town, oh, town, oh, town, oh. They said, Daddy, better go back again, 'cause it must be a mighty fine town, oh. Then the fox and his wife, without any strife, cut up the goose with a fork and knife. They never had such a supper in their life, and the little ones chewed on the bones, oh, bones, oh, bones, oh. They never had such a supper in their life, and the little ones chewed on the bones, oh.
I don't have a system for writing. It's like lazy fishing. Drop in a line, sit easy. If a fish bites, play it. If not, enjoy the weather. That's what John Charty says. Mr. Charty is a poet. You've read some of his poems in cricket, and here he is.
And on some days, I might take less. There was a man who lived in Perth. He had about $5 worth of boys and girls at 3 for $1. The less they were worth, the more they would holler. The more they would holler, the less they were worth. For 2 cents cash, I'd send you to Perth.
One of the people who puts Cricket Magazine together every month lives in England. Her name is Kay Webb. Kay, tell us a story.
Before I Count 15 by Michael Rosen. If you don't put your shoes on before I count 15, then we won't go to the woods to climb the chestnut. 1,
But I can't find them.
2,
I can't.
they're under the sofa. 3,
No?
oh yes. 4, 5, 6.
Stop! They've got knots. They've got knots.
You should untie the laces when you take your shoes off. 7,
Will you do one shoe while I do the other then?
8, but that would be cheating.
Please.
All right.
It always
9,
sticks. I'll use my teeth.
10,
It won't. It won't. It has. Look.
11,
I'm not wearing any socks.
12.
Stop counting. Stop counting. Mum, where are my socks? Mum.
They're in your shoes where you left them.
I didn't.
13,
Over inside out and upside down and bundled up.
14.
Have you done a knot on the shoe you were?
Yes, put it on the right foot.
But socks don't have a right and wrong foot.
The shoe's silly. 14 and a half.
I am. Wait, don't go to the woods without me. Look, that's one shoe already.
14 and 3/4.
There.
You haven't tied the bows yet.
We could do them on the way there.
No, we won't. 14 and 7/8.
Help me then. You know I'm not fast at bows.
14 and 15/16.
A single bow is right, isn't it?
15. We're off.
See, I did it, didn't I?
Teaching Toffees by Johnny Rodari. On the planet Yum, there are no books. Knowledge is bought in bottles, and all you have to do is drink it. History is a red liquid, rather like black currant syrup. Geography is a green peppermint drink. while grammar is colorless and tastes like mineral water. There are no schools. You study at home. Every morning, each child, according to age, has to swallow half a glass of history, 3 teaspoonfuls of arithmetic, and so on. Would you believe it? They still manage to get into mischief. Come on, be good, says the mother. You just don't know how scrumptious zoology is. It is as sweet can be. If you don't believe me, ask Caroline. Caroline is the robot maid. Caroline, obliging as ever, offers to take the first spoonful of zoology. She loves it.
It's wonderful,
She cries.
a cow is a 4-footed animal that eats grass and produces milk chocolate.
You see, insists the child's mother. The pupil is still uncertain. Perhaps it's not zoology at all, but cod liver oil. But at last she gives up, opens her mouth and shuts her eyes, and swallows the lesson to the last drop. Of course, there are also very eager students. Some are almost too eager. They get up at night and raid the icebox, drinking a bottle of history at a single sitting. They become very wise. For children who are still too young for lessons, they have teaching toffees that taste like strawberry, pineapple, almond, molasses, chocolate, and so on. They teach simple little poems, the names of the days of the week, the numbers up to 10, and many other things. One of my astronaut friends brought back one of these toffees as a souvenir. I gave it to my daughter, and she at once began to recite a nonsense rhyme in the Yum language. It went something like this.
Ran, Pierrot, Pinda, Pimpernel.
I could hardly understand a word of it.
A cricket is a bug, a busy bug. A cricket is a bug, a busy bug. A bug with certain things to do, so turn this over for side to. A cricket is a bug, a busy bug. A cricket is a bug, a happy bug. A cricket is a bug, a happy bug. He has a special treat for you, just wait and hear what's on side two. A cricket is a bug, a happy bug. A cricket is a bug, a happy bug. A cricket is a bug, a happy bug.
Richard Wilbur is a poet who's written a whole book of poems called Opposites. You may have seen some of them in cricket. Now let's hear Mr. Wilbur tell you about the game of opposites.
Sometimes our family played a game of our own invention, which we called opposites. It was an odd little game with no rules and no scoring, and it went something like this. One of us would say, for instance, what's the opposite of light? To which someone would say, dark. Then a third person might say, I think serious is a better answer. And a fourth might say, what's the matter with heavy? When we had run out of opposites for light, the game would start again with someone asking the opposite of top, or uncle, or flat, or whale, or anything else. As I said, we made up the game for our own use, but I'm sure that many other people have discovered that opposites are good fun to think about. Here are some poems of my own on the subject. I hope they'll amuse you. What is the opposite of string? It's gnertz, which doesn't mean a thing. There's more than one way to be right about the opposite of white, and those who merely answer black are very, very single track. They make one want to scream, "I beg your pardon," but within an egg, a fact known to the simplest folk, the opposite of white is yolk. The opposite of donut, wait a minute while I meditate. This isn't easy. Ah, I've found it. A cookie with a hole around it. What is the opposite of hat? It isn't hard to answer that. It's shoes, for shoes and hat together protect our two extremes from weather. Between these two extremes there lies a middle, which you would be wise to clothe as well, or you'll be chilly and run the risk of looking silly. Not to have any hair is called hairlessness, or being bald. It is a fine thing to be hairy, yet it's not always necessary. Bald heads on men are very fine, particularly if they shine. And who conceivably could wish to see a hairy frog or fish? Some creatures, though, do well to wear a normal covering of hair. I don't think I should care to know those hairless dogs of Mexico who ramble naked out of doors and must be patted on their paws. What is the opposite of July? That's hard to answer, but I'll try. In San Francisco and Quebec, Duluth, Big Forks, Mamaroneck, and every other city here in the upper Western Hemisphere, July can be extremely hot. But far to southward, it is not. The month can be extremely chill in Paraguay or in Brazil, and furthermore, July can mean a blizzard or so in Argentina. These unexpected facts are why the opposite of July is July. The opposite of fast is loose, and if you doubt it, you're a goose. Nonsense, you cry, as you should know the opposite of fast is slow. Well, let's not quarrel. Have a chair and see what's on the bill of fare. We should agree on this at least. The opposite of fast is feast. What is the opposite of a prince? A frog must be the answer, since, as all good fairy stories tell, when some witch says a magic spell causing the prince to be disguised so that he won't be recognized, he always ends up green and sad and sitting on a lily pad. The opposite of opposite? That's much too difficult. I quit.
Toad's tongue twister. A tree toad loved a she toad that lived up in a tree. He was a two-toed tree toad, while a three-toed toad was she. The he-toed tree toad tried to gain the she toad's friendly nod, for the two-toed tree toad loved the ground that the three-toed tree toad trod. The two-toed tree toad tried in vain, but couldn't please her whim, for from her tree-toad bower, with her she-toad power, the three-toed tree toad vetoed him.
Here's John Chardy back again to read another one of his poems.
Why the Sky is Blue. I don't suppose you happen to know why the sky is blue. It's because the snow takes out the white. That leaves it clean for the trees and grass to take out the green. Then pears and bananas start to mellow, and bit by bit, they take out the yellow. The sunsets, of course, take out the red and pour it into the ocean bed or behind the mountains in the west. You take all that out, and the rest couldn't be anything else but blue. Look for yourself. You can see it's true.
Here's Kay Webb again, reading something that'll tell you all about Pamela Travers. You know Pamela Travers. She wrote Mary Poppins.
How Did Mary Poppins Find Me? By Pamela Travers. Where do ideas come from? Have you any idea where you get an idea? So many people, many of them children, have asked me where I got the idea for Mary Poppins. They want to know whether she's taken from somebody in real life or whether she's just invented. But how could she be taken from somebody in real life? Did you ever know anybody who slid up the banisters? On the other hand, who could have just invented somebody who slides up banisters and flies from place to place with no other means of propulsion than a parrot-headed umbrella? These are tricky questions, and I never knew how to answer them till Hendrik Wilhelm van Loon, who wrote and drew so many things for children, came hurrying to my rescue. No one thought her up, he told me. She's an idea that came looking for you. And as he was speaking, the idea of 3 dancing elephants apparently came looking for him, for he drew them for me on the back of an envelope. But why me, I wanted to know. Why didn't she happen to somebody else? And then I remembered that a boy of 16 had once asked me to promise him never to become clever. Well, it was a strange request, but one I could readily agree to, though of course I wanted to know what he meant. I've just been reading Mary Poppins again, he told me, and it could only have been written by a special sort of lunatic. Well, in a way, I understood. To think things up, you have to be clever. But to sit still and let them happen to you clearly needs something else. Maybe a kind of listening. Perhaps Lewis Carroll sat still and listened, and the idea of Alice in Wonderland came by and tapped him on the shoulder. Perhaps the world is full of ideas, all of them looking for the right person. If so, all you have to do, in addition to being a lunatic, is simply to sit quite still and listen, and one of them may happen to you.
The Comic Strip Mouse by Johnny Rodari. A comic strip mouse, tired of living between the pages of a children's comic and wanting to exchange the smell of paper for the smell of cheese, gave a great jump and found himself in the real world, the world of real mice.
Yow! Eek!
He exclaimed at once as he smelled the smell of a cat.
What did you say?
Squeaked the other mice, puzzled by such an odd sort of words.
Sploom! Bang!
Said the comic strip mouse, who only knew the language of comics.
He must be a Turk,
said an old veteran mouse who had sailed over the Mediterranean. So he said good morning to the comic strip mouse in Turkish. The comic strip mouse gazed at him in amazement and replied,
Zap! Flash! Oop!
He's not a Turk, announced the veteran mouse.
Then what is he? How do I know?
So they called him How Do I Know, and treated him like the village idiot.
How do I know?
They asked him.
Do you prefer plain cheese or gorgonzola?
Moof, swoosh,
Splat!
yum, replied the comic strip mouse. All the other mice burst out laughing, and the tiniest, weeniest mice would tweak his tail just to be able to hear him complain.
Yikes! Yipe! Yow!
One fine day, they all went off hunting together in a windmill, where there were hundreds of sacks of flour. The mice ripped open the bags and tucked in, and as they chewed away, their jaws went
Crick, crick, crick.
as a mouse's jaws always do when he chews. Not so the comic strip mouse. The sound he made was chomp, chomp, chomp. Goo?
You really must learn to eat properly,
Said the old veteran mouse.
Your table manners are abominable. Don't you realize that you're making a most disgusting noise? Arg!
Said the comic strip mouse, and started on a fresh sack of flour. Then the old veteran mouse gave a wink, and very quietly all the real mice scampered away and left the poor comic strip mouse with his head buried in a sack of flour. They were sure he'd never be able to find his way home. The comic strip mouse went on guzzling, and when at last he realized he was alone, it was too dark to set out for home. He decided to spend the night in the windmill. He was just dropping off to sleep when he heard a soft padding of feet and saw two yellow lights in the darkness like the lights of a car. Heavens, a cat! Oh, great! Exclaimed the comic strip mouse with a shudder. Wow, replied the cat. Thank goodness, it was a comic strip cat. The real cats had all chased him away because he couldn't say meow properly. The two castaways threw themselves into each other's arms and swore eternal friendship. They spent the whole night chatting away in the strange language of comics.
Grr, yow, arg, zoom, tweak, slam.
Every month, Cricket has a drawing contest. And I must say, you Crickets draw very well. I wish I could. I can't even draw a box. But Arnold Lobel can draw and write, too. He's going to read his story, Toad's Garden.
Frog was in his garden. Toad came walking by. "What a fine garden you have, Frog," he said. "Yes," said Frog, "it is very nice, but it was hard work." "I wish I had a garden," said Toad. "Here are some flower seeds. Plant them in the ground," said Frog, "and soon you will have a garden." "How soon?" asked Toad. "Quite soon," said Frog. Toad ran home. He planted the flower seeds. "Now, seeds," said Toad, "start growing." Toad walked up and down a few times. The seeds did not start to grow. Toad put his head close to the ground and said loudly, "Now, seeds, start growing." Toad looked at the ground again. The seeds did not start to grow. Toad put his head very close to the ground and shouted, "Now, seeds, start growing." Frog came running up the path. "What is all this noise?" he asked. "My seeds will not grow," said Toad. "You are shouting too much," said Frog. "These poor seeds are afraid to grow." "My seeds are afraid to grow?" asked Toad. "Of course," said Frog. "Leave them alone for a few days. Let the sun shine on them. Let the rain fall on them. Soon your seeds will start to grow." That night, Toad looked out of his window. "Drat!" said Toad. My seeds have not started to grow. They must be afraid of the dark. Toad went out to his garden with some candles. I will read the seeds a story, said Toad. Then they will not be afraid. Toad read a long story to his seeds. All the next day, Toad sang songs to his seeds. And all the next day, Toad read poems to his seeds. And all the next day, Toad played music for his seeds. Toad looked at the ground. The seeds still did not start to grow. "What shall I do?" cried Toad. "These must be the most frightened seeds in the whole world." And Toad felt very tired, and he fell asleep. "Toad, Toad, wake up," said Frog. "Look at your garden." Toad looked at his garden. Little green plants were coming up out of the ground. "At last," shouted Toad, "my seeds have stopped being afraid to grow." "And now you will have a nice garden too," said Frog. "Yes," said Toad, "but you were right, Frog. It was very hard work."
Of Ships and Trees by Beatrice Tanaka, a folk tale from Vietnam. When someone comes home after a long trip, the villagers, who have never traveled farther than the neighboring market, always listen wide-eyed to the traveler's tales. It's an invitation to brag, and some returning travelers just can't resist the temptation. One young man, back from a long journey, once told his admiring audience a new story every evening, each story stranger and more wonderful than the last. "I once saw a ship in a foreign port," he said one evening, "and it was so enormous you couldn't even imagine its size if you tried. Why, a young boy who set out from the prow would arrive at the stern an old white-haired man." Gasped the audience. "What's so wonderful about that?" asked a woodcutter who was getting annoyed with these nightly bragging sessions. "In the forest not far from here, I once saw some trees so huge, so old, so tall, that a bird that had been flying for 10 years hadn't even reached halfway to the top." "Liar," cried the traveler. "Trees like that don't exist." The woodcutter smiled. "Then where do you suppose the carpenters found the wood for your ship's mast?" he asked. The next poem was written and will be read by a very famous poet. It's called The Song of the Jellicles, and here is the voice of T.S. Eliot.
Jellicle cats come out tonight. Jellicle cats come one, come all. The Jellicle moon is shining bright. Jellicles come to the Jellicle ball. Jellicle cats are black and white. Jellicle cats are rather small. Jellicle cats are merry and bright, and pleasant to hear when they cut a wall. Jellicle cats have cheerful faces. Jellicle cats have bright black eyes. They like to practice their airs and graces, and wait for the Jellicle moon to rise. Jellicle cats develop slowly. Jellicle cats are not too big. Jellicle cats are roly-poly. They know how to dance a gavotte and a jig. Until the Jellicle moon appears, they make their toilette and take their repose. Jellicles wash behind their ears. Jellicles dry between their toes. Jellicle cats are white and black. Jellicle cats are of moderate size. Jellicles jump like a jumping jack. Jellicle cats have moonlit eyes. They're quiet enough in the morning hours. They're quiet enough in the afternoon, reserving their terpsichorean powers to dance by the light of the Jellicle moon. Jellicle cats are black and white. Jellicle cats, as I said, are small. If it happens to be a stormy night, they will practice a caper or two in the hall. If it happens the sun is shining bright, you would say they had nothing to do at all. They are resting and saving themselves to be right for the Jellicle moon and the Jellicle ball.
A cricket